Adam, thanks so much for coming on the Sales and Sports podcast. For the listeners, would love to dive into it and understand what you do at the moment, what are you doing in the tech industry, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, sweet. So, appreciate you having me on. So just, dive right into it. At the moment, I'm currently an SDR over at Cision. So it's like a PR and communications software. To go back to sort of before all of this and before we met, so I started Entr Tech. I'd say I was very much typical sort of guy in school, didn't really know what he wanted to do, didn't really have much of a direction. Did okay in my GCSEs, but never really put much work in, wasn't that interested in academic sort of life. And then went on to sixth form, kind of pushed that way through my parents more than a choice of my own.
What were you studying at sixth form?
So I did, the first year I was doing sport science, applied sciences, history and government politics. And I was like, and I dropped history and government and politics. So I only had 2 subjects. So I was having like 28 hours of free sessions a week and I still wasn't getting the coursework done. I was just messing around, playing football and all that sort of stuff. And then, I ended up dropping out of that probably, I would say about 2 months before my final exams.
2 months for A-levels, the final?
Like A2s, yeah.
Okay.
So I wasted not wasted, but that's like a year and a half. I was just like, and I did that to go into washing up like KP at a local hotel.
Wow. So you can paint the picture. Where were you? Were you in London or?
No. So I was living in a little village called Kongsbury. So it's halfway in between Bristol and like Weston-super-Mare.
Nice.
It's really nice. There's not like a huge amount going on there. So I think growing up it was just like typical play football on weekends, go to the pub. And in terms of like career, I didn't really have an idea of what I wanted to do. And I started working sort of part-time as a kitchen porter while I was at sixth form, doing quite a lot of hours over the weekends, kind of saw the chefs.
Nice.
And I just kind of set on wanting to go and like start making money straight away.
Nice. Was that behind the decision to leave your A-level exams? Quite a big move 2 months before. Were you like actually had enough of that and just want to go and earn and start?
I don't think I was there. Because I knew one thing I did know, I 100% didn't want to go to university. So I didn't want to do anything that was like made sense for me to go there. I didn't want to be a lawyer. I didn't want to be a doctor or anything like that. As soon as I started earning like a bit of money, even though back then it was like literally £5 an hour, I was like, well, at least it's something, it's better than just mooching around, like messing around at school. And I started doing that, and I think within about 3 or 4 months, I started sort of asking questions with the chefs, learning from them, and then eventually, within about a year, they put me on an apprenticeship and made me like a commie chef.
Nice.
And then from there, that's when I was like, well, this might not be like my forever job or like career path I want to do. But I'm just going to make the most out of it and sort of work my way up.
Nice.
And just work as hard as I can and then use that to sort of travel and do all those sorts of things. So that's kind of where like, and I make it sound like I had like a big plan in place. I didn't. I was sort of winging it a lot of it.
But I guess that's what you do when you're young in your 20s. The great thing about hospitality is it can allow you to travel the world, find new places wherever you go in the world. There'll always be a need for chefs or people that work in F&B, right? So I know your story. So you worked as a commie in Bristol. Where else did you travel to? What was the journey from there?
So I think I was working as a commie, worked my way up to chef de partie. I was at my first hotel, it was a Hilton hotel, in like a Mark Beer White steakhouse for 5 years. And then I decided to go off to Asia traveling, and that was my first little trip away.
Nice.
Me and my friend Alex, and that was again like a bit of a like no prep. I saved up. I think I took about $2,000 for 6 months. So I was like, well, as long as I'm there, it doesn't matter if I run out of money. I've got a flight back in 6 months. I'll just figure it out. So that was really good. And again, that was a bit of a nightmare of a trip. Like, my mate lost our passports on our first night.
Right, first night.
That's
night. Impressive.
How?
We
went out to drink. I don't know. I said to him, I gave him mine when we were in the hostel.
Yeah.
I was like, go and put these in the locker. He's like, yeah, fine. We've been drinking a bit. And then he didn't put them in there, apparently.
Yeah.
So the next day I went to look for it, and I was like, well, where's the passports? He's like, Oh no, and he was so
nightmare.
um
So you did different countries working
so
through that, or just
we did
traveling?
so we were stuck in Bangkok for like a month, and then we went up to Chiang Mai, so like northern Thailand.
Nice.
Did a bit more like cultural stuff up there. Went up to a bit further to Pai, I believe that's a bit further up. It's really nice up there, just sort of super chilled in the jungle, relaxing. And that was really, really nice. So I spent a couple of months, a month or so around there. And then we went back to Bangkok to the embassy to pick up our new passports. And then we went down to Cambodia. So like Siem Reap, I think, was the first stop. And then down to like Sihanoukville, which is when I got a job like promoting nightclubs, which was, that was a really good laugh, because it was like everything we wanted to do as like 21-year-old and 21-year-olds. And yeah, that was really good fun. It was just basically getting free accommodation, unlimited alcohol, and just had to make sure the nightclub was busy when it was open, basically.
Nice. So nightclub promoter in Cambodia, that was on one of your jobs, right?
Yeah. So
that's almost like your first, I guess, venture potentially into sales, right? Because you are selling nightclubs.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a bit of an easier sell because it is literally free drinks. So it's like, but no, it was a good laugh and like entertaining as well, and just doing like beer pong with like
nice
customers and all. Like we used to sell like booze cruises and bar crawls as well. Wow. So we'd have people selling tickets for them, but we'd also like send people over that way.
Cool.
And we'd get to go on them once a week or once every 2 weeks as well for free. So that was always so good.
Yeah.
So
probably not good for the liver though.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. So
nice. And then from Asia, did you go back to the UK? What was your journey from there?
Yeah. So then I came back to the UK, and then I worked at Thatcher's cider in like the brewery. Had like a little flagship restaurant there. They opened up, and I wanted to go for some of the rosettes and things there. So I joined there. I think I was only there for about 8 months, and I decided to go off onto the yachts. So I went over to Isle of Wight or Man. I always get them mixed up, but to do I actually wanted to be a deckhand to get out of chefing. This is my first time I was like, I'm going to leave chefing.
Right.
So I went over to Isle of Man or Isle of Wight, and then did like a deckhand course.
Nice.
So to learn everything you need to learn about sort of ropes, knots, got a powerboat license, radio license, SDCW, which is like boat safety. You need to work on any sort of ship, no matter the role.
So you were like below deck.
Yeah, sort of vibes. And then I went there, and I think it was really good to travel. But then on the boat I was on, there was a quick realization that like I was in nice places, but I was just working like a ton, and I was very rarely leaving the ship and stuff. So I think I stayed there for about 8 months to a year, and it was good. There was experiences of like getting to go and see the Monaco Grand Prix, and doing like being around like Antibes, Nice, Cannes, all those like really nice areas. So it was good, and the time we did get off was really good. And we used to like work hard, play hard, as people love to say. So that was a really good experience. And from there, then I decided to, with that money saved on the boat, I applied for a working holiday visa in Australia.
Nice.
Then I came back to the UK, did a couple of festivals in the summer then.
Nice.
And then went off to Australia for a year as well,
nice.
which was really good actually. That was one of the best years I probably had, just in terms of like being somewhere that's like really nice, like beaches, culture over there's nice as well. Like
outdoor living, isn't it?
Yeah, outdoor living, and like a lot of traveling around. Went to Sydney, worked in like a Michelin star restaurant there. So I did 4 months there, which was a good experience. There's a lot of work. It was like long 17-hour days, and I had like an hour and a half commute as well.
Wow.
And oftentimes I would miss the last train, so I'd have to like taxi home, which like costed me like an arm and a leg as well.
Fortune, Australia. Yeah.
So but no, that was really good. And I think those skills that I learned sort of, especially from places like working in places like that, and like the more high end stuff. And I did a few agencies as well. And I came back to London working. I went to like did a few shifts at Pollen Street, and like Michelin star places like that, you learn a lot of like resilience and hard work and like all those transferable skills that help me sort of later on down the line.
100%. So like I can imagine, you know, the phrase, right, you can't handle the heat, get out the kitchen.
Yeah.
It's intense, right? Like I've got family that work in hospitality. I know how intense it can be, especially back of house. So tell me about, you know, the average, like what's like the most intense experience you've had in the kitchen? Like you've been told to F off, or like what's a day to day look like there, right? Because you're going to build up so much resilience, and there's probably other chefs that are thinking, actually, I could never work in tech because I'm not technical, but there's this huge commercial side of tech, which is tech sales. So what transferable skills did you learn, and like what experience, can you tell me like the wildest experience you've had in the kitchen?
Yeah, so I'd say in terms of wild experiences, I think there's just like, I'm trying to think, it's just like the things that happened more so in early on in my career. So like when it was a bit more, I don't know, you used to see like people putting like spoons in like fryers and then putting them in like people's back pockets, or like walking up to people and like touching them on the arm.
Wow.
Or like little things, just like, or people like getting pound coins like super hot on the stove and throwing them on the floor, and someone pick it up and like, burn their fingers. Or I think, and in some other places, I'll be like open kitchens and I'm getting screamed at, being told like, "Why are you here?"
Wow.
Like just from like a small mistake.
Yeah.
In front of like 100 guests. So I'd say it's like things like that. But towards the end of the career, that all sort of died down. It was more just like, because I was working. I think once you get better, you kind of, I was the one sort of teaching people then, so then it wasn't as intense towards the end. But definitely at the beginning of the career, when you're making all those like silly mistakes and like seeing silly, like I remember once Christmas Day, we had all the potatoes on the stove boiling for roast potatoes, and the guy forgot to take them off. Just turned like all of our Christmas Day roasties into mash basically. So we had to just things like that, and like just the consequences of that, where people just go mental, like making people cry regularly, people walking out all the time, always short staffed. It's always just such a hectic, and everyone's so highly strung as well.
100%. That's the main thing, right? Everyone's highly strung and short of staff, especially like post COVID, because especially in hospitality, you can't find as many people because obviously after Brexit as well, lots of people have gone back to their countries, and also after taking furlough, for example, a lot of people have decided to go into other industries. So it's actually pretty intense industry to be in. So yeah, tell me, like, I know your journey, right? So during the COVID pandemic, you started looking at other things. What for you was the factor in looking at changing careers, and how do you thought of tech sales? Did you know what tech sales was? But what was the real moment in your life where you decided, okay, I want to move away from hospitality full time?
Yeah, so I think there was like kind of in amongst those chopping and changing of jobs. I think when I came back from Australia, that's when I came to London, and I tried being a personal trainer at one of the gym boxes in London, and that was really good. It was just really hard though, and then summer was coming up, and it was quite a corporate space, so I decided to go back to chefing. So I think I knew for like quite a long time that I didn't want to be a chef, basically, because I don't know, I just used to look at sort of where people beyond me were, and I didn't really see myself owning a restaurant, or really wanting to own a restaurant and spend every waking hour grinding away there. And then that's when I started looking. So I think I started looking at other options. When I was like 26, 27 maybe. And I just remember everything I was looking at was like going back to college, doing apprenticeship. Apprenticeships obviously paying like next to peanuts especially when you're trying to live in London. It's not really feasible.
Yeah.
And then there was a few other things I was thinking about doing, but as always, just like going in, doing like a very manual job. Like I think carpet cleaning at one point and setting up my own thing was like an idea. And basically like going back to uni as well and trying to like get a degree and go into something that you can earn like a much higher cap in. Yeah. And then that's when like kind of doing that research, I came across like tech sales and being like an SDR and like the world of like AEs. I think at the time it was quite early on, but it was quite still, that was when the time like people were starting to post content on YouTube around the role, and I think especially in America, it was really starting to take off around that time, and everyone in America was like, would always be like no skills, and then 6 months later they're in a job earning like 80 to 90k a year in dollars, so whatever that equates to in pounds. So then I had the battle of like, so I'd done nightclub promoting and things in Australia, and I was never really like that good at it. Like I was okay, but I never thought I'd have a sort of career within sales. So I thought sort of that gift of the gab, being super like extroverted, and all those sort of character traits I don't really have. So I didn't really think of it as much of like a serious career path. And then that's when my partner was just like, I really think you should give this a go, because, and then, so then I was like, right, fine, you are right. Like, I don't know. And I'm sure there's like training and stuff coming into it. So, and then that's when I was doing some research and I came across Entr Tech.
Nice.
And I think one of the things, to be honest, that really did appeal was the fact we could do it. We could do the course and then get yourself in employment before you're having to like worry about sort of paying that off as well. Yeah. So it seemed like it almost seemed too good to be true. To be honest with you, when we saw the advert, I was like, yeah, it all sounded like too good to be true.
Yeah, that's what lots of people say. You're not the first person to say that.
Yeah, no. So yeah, that's when I got in touch with you. And I remember, I think I did one of our calls when I was in France at the time.
Nice.
And then I started on there, but
nice.
But I guess to give a bit of context on Entr Tech as well, then when I started it, so I was working at HG Walters by that point in the butchers. It was like a Monday to Friday gig. And I guess one of the main benefits of Entr Tech for me, and I'm sure there's people who are going to be coming through or who have done the course as well, or in full-time employment and need to keep their income coming in while trying to sort of upskill and like move on to that next role.
Yeah.
So for me, that was one of the best things, how flexible it was. Obviously, going to the live sessions with all the experts and the people with all the experience that you did like the interviews with. Obviously, it would have been great to go to more of them live, but the fact you can still watch them back and get the value from it and fill out all the coursework and kind of learn as you go along.
Yeah. And
do all that in the weekends and still keep up with the course, for me was probably one of like the biggest benefits. And because not many things out there that you could sort of upskill for a new role. Yeah. Whilst working in full-time employment.
Epic. And tell us about your journey. Lots of people listening to this will be probably maybe working in hospitality, maybe fellow chefs or people that are thinking of changing careers in their 20s or 30s. Talk to me about the interview process. I'd love to go into that, because it is tough, right? It is really tough, especially trying to break into the industry. So what learnings did you get from Entr Tech that really, what's the best part about the program for you in terms of the learnings, but also talk me through that stage and process so people can have some sort of context and help when they're looking to interview in.
Yeah. So I'd say one of the best things about Entr Tech was how you didn't, a lot of other sort of training providers at the time, or when you look at adverts, they're always dressing it up to be like the easiest thing in the world, right? You just go call a few people, book a few meetings, you make a ton of cash. But I think one of the things that really helped me was how you guys managed the expectation of coming into a role. It's difficult, and it's easier for some people than others, depends where you go, and companies and all those things. But in terms of, I think the best learnings I took away from the course was the cold calling practice, understanding the Sandler sort of methodology a bit around permission-based openers, and just giving you some sort of framework going into an interview where you can at least sound like you kind of know what your day-to-day is going to look like, and you know a little bit about sales.
Yeah.
And I think as like those things, being able to show that before, because I remember before Entr Tech, I applied for a few roles and never heard anything back. And then obviously working with yourself very closely and like getting the CVs up to scratch and having, you know, yourself who's got experience in the industry, who's been there and sort of done it as well, have like giving you feedback on CVs, interview prep, all of that was like super invaluable. And I remember when I did my first few interviews, I just used to think of it as like doing the job to get the job. Because obviously without having a degree or any A levels and just having Entr Tech, I had to apply for like a lot of roles to get sort of noticed. So I think I applied for like 150 to like 180 roles before I started getting like consistent interviews. So yeah, I think just giving you that giving you those skills really to go into an interview and be able to sort of feel like you know what you're talking about, and then doing cold call role plays, because obviously doing the certification on the course. Yeah. And you were not the easiest prospect when you're doing the training. You have a bit of that experience. So, and obviously on interviews, then like it might be a bit difficult, but they're not super harsh, and like they are just trying to see if you can have a basic understanding and know how to like handle objections and just keep the conversation going in like a non-combative way, I guess, in like a personable way. And so yeah, and I think in terms of just like the constant feedback as well after the interviews, obviously advice from yourself going into them, things to talk about. You'd also like look at the website as well and like give us things, help us on that front. So I honestly don't think I would have got my foot in the door if it wasn't for Entr Tech and all that like support around that.
Well, I appreciate that, and yes, that's amazing for I guess people to hear in terms of like what you went through and what they can get to if they either want to come on the program or want to break into the industry. So talk to me about Cision and that interview process. You know, who did you speak to during the process, and I guess how did you stand up for them?
Yeah, sure. So that was initially I think I applied on LinkedIn, I think it was, and got through to the like talent partner at Cision at the time. And in those interviews, typically I think back then I used to think of it as they're just more around sort of making sure you have the right sort of reason for going into the roles. You know what's going to entail. You know what the day-to-day is. You understand what sales is and what's kind of going to be expected of you. And then I think that's what I tried to double down on, is because I knew I didn't have any experience. It's just to really like show them that I understood what the role is going to entail. I know it's not going to be easy, but I'm willing to put in the work, especially when things are tough at the beginning. I'm not just going to give up. You know, when things are difficult, I will figure it out. So, and then I think the second stage was just a meeting with our SDR manager, Roxy. And that's, again, I think I used to think of that as just trying to be like a human. Yeah. Have a conversation, relay back to your experiences. So I knew, obviously I didn't have any sales experience, but I did have a lot of transferable skills from chefing, like very resilient, happy to work hard, work longer hours than most people will be willing to. Organisation, things like that, like being switched on, being able to focus for long periods of time, like all of those skills. So then I used to try and tie back all of my experiences to like the job description and what they were asking for in that role, essentially. And then I got through that, and then we had to do a presentation on Cision, and I believe it was just about Cision, history of Cision, competitors, day-to-day of an SDR, what's going to be expected, I think there was a bit in there about how you're going to like stand out, or what's kind of your expectations coming into the role. And then we had to go into the office and present that. So that was to Roxy and Luke, and Luke's I think he's like a senior manager of business development, so like manager there,
VP sales. Nice.
And then so I went in, and for that, again, like super nervous coming into Canary Wharf, from someone who's just always worked in like restaurants and going into Canary Wharf thinking a bit like, what am I doing here?
Yeah, you got the finance bros in there. It's very like skyscraper vibes.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, no, and I went in and the interview went really well actually. They ended up did the presentation. I was up late the night before, sort of practicing it, and I think that's the thing. In the beginning, especially, I used to think of it as like I don't really have any experience, and I don't really have like the skills, like they're like the exact skills or requirements that like they want. But so I'm going to make up for everything else and like hard work and practicing that. And I thought if I could demonstrate that in my presentation of like being really like having a really good presentation put together, wasn't reading from the slides. I'd have like a little bit on the slide and elaborate on the point that I was making. And just trying to keep it like conversational as well. And then they ended up offering me the job on the spot.
Nice.
Which was it was really nice. And I had some other final stage interviews. And I told them I'd get back to them. And then essentially ended up accepting the offer like a couple of days later. And all of that was by like November last year. I believe.
So 12 months ago.
Yeah, 12 months ago. And I think I did the August cohort and I was very busy with sort of working and stuff as well. So to be able to knock that off in a few months. If you're working just a bit less or you're not doing long hours of a chef, I'm sure it's easy to not easy, but it's more achievable to knock it out in a couple of months, you know.
Yeah, because I remember that checking in with you, and you were working like savage hours, like working like late in the evening sometimes, and it was really tough for you, to make everything, be available for every individual session, but you did so well to juggle that and multitask. And I guess what was it like going into the job, right? So you landed the job, and how did that feel? Did you put in your notice? Like, that feel good? Was it a bit daunting? Like,
it felt good. Yeah, I think I always had a bit on my brain was like, because you're going into a role where, I don't know, I think people make it sound like, and I guess maybe it's a bit more savage for sort of the account exec role maybe, but I always had the image of like sales teams and stuff being like, if you don't hit quota for like the first couple of months, like you're gone. And like I'm sure there might be a few places sort of similar, but so I think I always had that like nervousness about starting, of being like, and especially once I did start like working in the office or working from home, I was like, what's going on here? Like, but no, and then but I think it was a case of I knew kind of a few people by that point as well who had come from no sales experience, like through Entr Tech and stuff. So I just sort of had the attitude of, there's lots of other people who are doing it. Like, there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to. And then like starting the job, I believe it was like a nice ramp up period. So went from first month, I started in January. That was just like learning about the product, what PR is, how PR and comms professionals, like the day-to-day, different personas, kind of the features in the platform, because there's a few main bits we can like sell different packages and stuff. And then from February, it was like 2 demos to book. And we're doing, we booked like the discovery calls, but we also like run the discovery calls as well. So it was booking, and then once they get booked onto a demo, then that'll be, once that demo is sat, and that's like one of our target. So I did 2 demos in February, 4 demos in March, and on full target by April. And then we had a revenue target added in 2 months after that, which was like 10K and 20K.
Nice.
But I think in terms of ramping up, obviously I remember messaging, like I was super like stressed, nervous on the phones, like any sort of human element of like me, or just like lost on the phone. I was like super robotic, sort of stressing about like saying the right thing, or like really like attached to the outcomes, I guess. So I remember even putting in like the Entr Tech group chat that we have, like help. And I wasn't even doing like that badly at the time. I was still hitting target, but I think it was just in my like just being so hard on myself, and like that attitude from chefing of like everything's got to be perfect, and it's always your fault sort of thing.
Yeah.
Which is, I've since learned, like, work on things and coach yourself, but detach from the outcome. Sometimes, like, there is another person at the end of the phone or that you are reaching out to, and that sometimes doesn't matter what you say. If they're having a bad day, they're going to give you a hard time.
It's not life and death as well.
Yeah, exactly.
But I remember you actually posting on the community chat that you were like struggling cold calling, and like so many people were pinging in the chat, do this, do that. Like, it's so normal, right? Like, I think that's the nice thing when you realize actually everyone goes through that sort of learning curve and has those natural feelings, right, when they're starting in tech sales.
Yeah, and I think it's something that not everyone sort of talks about. You certainly not like the most popular thing to talk about. And then once you actually start talking to other people, once you get into the industry, like, everyone goes through it, unless you're coming from like a similar like sales background. Like, everyone who's like career switchers, most people I've spoken to anyway, they all had exactly the same feelings. Like, and even now, like 9 months into the role, I don't get. Some days you do still get a bit like 9, when it's like 8:45 in the morning. You're like, oh, I don't really want to call anyone in 15 minutes, but you just kind of do it, and you stick. It's part of being disciplined and sticking to that, and that's how you kind of overcome those things. It's like setting the small goals, and also it's like celebrating the small wins as well. It doesn't have to be booking a meeting.
Yeah.
To be a successful call, to get more information, understand more about the company than you did before the start of the call, call back at a later date, all of those sorts of things. So I used to set little goals like that of kind of like talk times, or I want to come away from this call with more information than what I had going into it. And then it's like a really low barrier of like loads of little wins throughout the day. That helped me stay motivated and keep pushing towards those larger targets.
Nice. What's it like working with account executives? Do you work with them on a daily basis?
Yeah, so we've been put into sort of pods now. That wasn't that way at the beginning, but that's been super valuable as well. So I'm in a pod with 2 of like the senior account executives, and getting like their knowledge. One of them's been selling Cision for like 20 years.
Wow. So
like getting insight from them and how things have changed, but also like best practices. I'm coming into the role, things you can be saying about the product as well, and like understanding that ICPs, I guess, their problems and challenges, and they're really, because they've been doing it for so long, they're really able to sort of communicate that in a very simple way, which has been super like beneficial and helpful. And I think as the same thing goes, like the relationships with your account execs is very like super important. I think sometimes it's being transparent even with them as well. If you're having a bit of a slow month, or you have a discovery call, and we try and get like 3 pains and like the impacts of them. But sometimes people, they'll have like the pain, but it's not like it's not anything that's keeping them up at night.
It's not urgent.
Yeah, it's not like top of the priority list. So I think sometimes if you have sort of ops like that as well, and just being transparent and putting in a placeholder for the demo, and then going back to them saying, this is why I think it's an opportunity. They have budget, or they're looking to get something in place the next 2 months. They are already investing in this sort of software, and just having that conversation with them has helped me a lot as well. Because 9 times out of 10, they'll be happy to sort of look at it, and then they'll be like, let's just do the demo and see where it goes. And having that transparency and that honesty has led to like really good working relationships for me, where they're like really happy to help out. If I ever have any questions, I can always go to them as well, which is always really nice.
Nice, good stuff. And I guess looking back, reflecting on the last 12 months, what's the best thing about working in tech sales compared to working in hospitality?
A couple of things. I think like the earnings, like not only how much you're earning, but like the potential of, we have accelerators. So we go past 6, we get quite decent accelerators on what we're booking per demo, but also once we surpass our yearly rev target, and it goes up to like 300% accelerator. So like having those incentives in place when you're a bit tired or you're feeling a bit unmotivated, it's like, well, actually this is like directly benefiting me. And also being able to, so we work from home 3 days a week as well, which has been
nice,
absolute game changer. Just you get those couple of hours you get back from the commute, save money as well. And yeah, you can just kind of have your morning to yourself, get up a bit early, go for a walk, go and grab a coffee, get into the day nice and like go for a little workout. And before, like chefing was always out the door at 6, back home at like midnight. So yeah, I think those two main things, and then obviously the career progression. I'm looking forward to keep up skilling and then get into that account exec role. And that's kind of where I'm looking at the minute. I'm not thinking too far ahead of that next step. So
nice, wicked. And advice for people that are looking to break in, what would you say if you could summarize it in like 3 sentences? What would you give to someone who's probably working in, hospitality or working as a chef? What advice would you give to them to break into the industry, or, to consider if it's the right thing to do, right? Because not everyone is suited for sales or software sales. Yeah. What advice would you give to them?
Well, I think it's a good question. I think if you're like, you don't have to be like that extroverted, like sort of gift of the gab, super witty, anything like that to get into the job. And that's something that stopped me going down the sales route for a very long time. If you are introverted, you're resilient, and you're a good listener, and it's all skills you can learn as well. So, you can break in. You don't have to be that typical sort of salesman personality to have a place in sales. There's other things.
Love that.
Like being a good listener, being resilient,
being hard work ethic. I can tell. Yeah. When we first spoke, I could tell you would outwork anyone. Working kitchens, working hospitality, I could tell you'd just be a savage when it came to working hard, which is probably 50%, if not more, of the job. Just really wanting it, being competitive, and
yeah, exactly. And I always think of it now, especially like through the tougher periods, like April when everyone's away, like August. Those harder months I've done better because I just look at it as, while it is that there is certain skills you can work on, and obviously you can increase sort of the conversion rate of what you are doing. Ultimately, it does come down to, it is still a bit of a numbers game. And just putting in that work, when you're building out lists, adding more people in every day, reaching out to more people, making more dials to people. I think that's something that I definitely fall back on if, months aren't looking great at the beginning. Just fall back on that activity and that hard work. And that's, I think that's something that always sort of stays there as well. It's got like a constant.
Wicked. And would you say, last one to finish, would you say you needed a university degree to break into tech?
No, I think definitely not. And a lot of the jobs will advertise saying you need a degree, but I think if you can show that you're willing to invest in something like Entr Tech, and learn the skills and invest in yourself and upskill yourself, that's probably, and you've got life experience to go along with that. I think honestly 9 times out of 10 you'll still be considered, and don't think it might make it a bit of a longer process, but it definitely by no means stops you getting your foot in the door.
Perfect, man. Well, thanks so much for coming in, especially on a weekend, and excited to see what's next for you, right?
Yeah. So, thank you for having me, and fingers crossed we can do another podcast next year when I've broken into the AE role and doing well there. So.
100%, mate. Would love that, genuinely. Yeah. Thanks so much.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.